Hello everyone, this is Gary from Fantastic Fundas, and today in this lecture we are going to study about the princely India. Now you already know that there were princely states in India, right? For example, you can see this map over here. In this map you can see various princely states. For example, you can over here in this area, you can see Madras is here, right? I showed you earlier also the same map. And then this over here is Balochistan and Punjab, so on, right? They're huge. United Provinces, Central Provinces, and Bombay Presidency. So we have a lot of princely states. This Hyderabad is very important, and this Hyderabad was there. Okay, so there were a lot of states. Okay, Odisha is there. Some part of all these were under British control, and some was not. Now, coming to this topic of princely states or princely India, or the princely states in India, I would like to start this lecture with a quotation. I'll give you the background, and just before the background, I'll quickly tell you, like, the 40% of India, it was under the Indian princess, and it include like all the areas I showed you. For example, Hyderabad is there, and Mysore is there, and then Kashmir is there. So now, so there were many like small states also. All in all, like various estimates are there, but an agreeable estimate is approximately 565 states were there. Now, in all these, they all recognized what is officially called as the paramountcy of the British. Paramountcy of the British. Let me just write it. Now, whenever a question is asked on the princely states, you must always mention this word, paramountcy of the British. That's number one. And second thing is that because they recognize the paramountcy of the British in turn always protected them against any kind of threat to their autocratic power. Okay, so in return, British gave them protection. So this becomes important. Now, an obvious question that should arise over here is that why would Britishers be so keen in having good relationship with all the princely states? So I'll just answer that policy, because you already know that you know about Lord Curzon, right? He what kind of problems he created. He had this policy of interventionist, interventionist, right? So he had this policy, or this policy is actually known as interventionist paternalism. Now, if Curzon was following this policy of interventional paternalism, this led to a lot of problem between the Britishers on one side and the princes on the other. They were fighting actually because of this policy, and they could not have afforded to continue with this policy for obvious reasons. They wanted to control India, and how could they have controlled India without the help of princes? Obviously, this tussle, this strain in their relationship was in the beginning of the 20th century, that is 1900 plus onwards. Now, Minto then came, and Morley Minto reforms, I hope you remember that. Now, Lord Minto came and he followed the policy of laissez-faire. Now, in this policy, basically he would let the princes do as they want. That's what freedom, right? You can do as you wish. That's laissez-faire. Now, in this policy, why was this introduced? Because in the British India, right, there's like one British India, and then there is princely India, the area where princes were controlling, and the area under the British control. That's British India. Now, in British India, as you know, from the 1905, the nationalism in British India was very strong. Right? This is from 1900 to 1910, we can say this, right? If you don't know this, please go and see these lectures. These are very important lectures. This 1900, 1910. And when nationalism was strong, obviously, if suppose, this is princely and British India, and this over here is the princely India. This is princely India, this is British India. If something happens over here, it will automatically shift to here also, and this is what was happening. So all in all, what was actually happening is that Britishers wanted to avoid nationalism moving from British India to princely India. They wanted to control this, and this was the reason that they started supporting the princes primarily in the earlier part of the 20th century. And ultimately, after in the second decade of the 20th century, there came, you all know this, there came World War. Now in this World War One, the usefulness of the princes to the British Empire was demonstrated, because the princes gave lot of money to the Britishers for fighting this, and even the very valuable military services, and encouraged even army recruitment in their states. And as the war got over, so this is about World War that's happening. So as the war got over, so here is the war, and in war the princes support the British. Now when prince support the British, war got over, and now princes wanted something in return. They wanted something in return. This was the basic idea that I wanted to share with you in this. So what is that they wanted in return was, like, they wanted things like that Britishers should have less domineering tendency in the political department. So less domineering tendency in the political department. That's number one. Number two, they wanted that a guarantee of insularity against the political tides in British India. So they wanted that the spirit of nationalism should not reach their states and ultimately throw the rulers, because these people were targeting democracy at the end of the day when we get the freedom. And they also wanted larger participation in the consultative process of the empire. So largest participation in the consultative process of the empire. So that's how the things went. It was in pursuance of these demands that ultimately in 1919 Act, the Act of 1919, it provided for something which was called as the Chamber of Princes. Okay, and it was to advise the British Raj in all the matters which were related to states and their relationship with the paramount power. So that's how the things were. And the so there were various issues, like very funny things were there. For example, that all the princes who had 11 gun salutes, only those would be directly represented, other would have indirect representation, and so on. I mean, such funny things were there. This is not of importance to our exam, genocide thing. Anyway, so next is this is the spirit of nationalism. Participation issue got resolved through formation of Chamber of Province through the 1919 Act. But and this was political department. This Britishers would only give lip service, and Britishers would never agree to this. Now comes this second demand, which is the major issue. This second demand over here. Okay. Now we'll discuss this demand now. In this demand, that nationalism should take away. They wanted guarantee against this. A guarantee against that the tide of nationalism should not interfere in the princely states. Now, first of all, you need to understand, was there any nationalism happening in princely states? Answer is yes, because you cannot remain isolated when all the states around you are full of nationalism. And for example, we'll take this example of Bhils. Bhil movement was happening in Sirohi. Bhil movement. Now you can just ignore this. Okay, not the cell, right? The Bhil movement in Sirohi was happening. So that's how things were going on, right? I'll just rub it off. Yeah. So Bhil movement was going on in Sirohi is in Rajasthan. Now that's how, so same manner, a lot of tribal movements were going on, and again many processions against the Jagirdaris was in the princely states. So basically inside princely states there was lot of opposition having its genesis in nationalism. I hope this sentence clarifies the whole issue. Okay, now that's how the things were going on, and so it's not the, and obviously these princes retaliated, and some princes actually did a lot of good work. For example, in particular, like Baroda and even Travancore. Okay, Travancore would initially struggle against joining India, but then Travancore was quite an advanced stage, and Mysore was doing pretty good at that time, and also Cochin was doing pretty good. So that's how, like, they did bring some changes, but for the reformation of the agriculture and the zamindari and education. In fact, for that matter, Baroda was the first state to bring a compulsory primary education system. So you can well imagine that how advanced some of these princely states were in their own right. Now you can well imagine, see that there was some impact of nationalism on the princely states. There was one more impact, and this impact was like a funny thing actually, just for the people who are interested in history as such. For them, the Alwar had a ruler. His name was Jai Singh. Now this Jai Singh, he was impacted by nationalism, and that is why he said that I will not shake hands with Europeans without the gloves on. That kind of nationalism was percolating in the princely states also, and so on. These were the good people, and at the same time, not everything was good about the princely states. Not everyone was affected. In fact, some people resented against the nationalism that was coming in the princely states. For example, we can take this example of there was this visit of Prince of Wales. We have discussed this earlier. There was boycott all over, but this visit of Prince of Wales was partially successful because of the welcome given by the princely states. So that's how, like, I'm just giving you an example of how certain states did support British and were not impacted by nationalism. I've shown you both the sides of this. Okay, one is this nationalism, and the other is like people who were not happy with this kind of nationalism. Now, whatever the case be, even it was in support of nationalism or against, all of them effectively what they did, they popularized a movement against them own, and the shape of these movements against the princely states was formalized as Praja Mandals. The organization through which this opposition was being done, it was through Praja Mandals, and these Praja Mandals were the organization, the institutions in themselves, which ultimately would affiliate themselves to a national body for opposition to all the atrocity by the princess. And what was this national body called? Very important. This was known as All India States People's Conference. Very important. This is how these two terms come to our knowledge, and these two terms, I will be talking about these two terms in the coming lectures also, and this particular lecture, of course. Now all these Praja Mandals, they had their demands, right? Like all organizations that we study, they all have their certain demands. Now what kind of demands they were having? Their demands included better democracy, better rights, reform in agrarian system. The demand would be same, whether it's the British Empire or the Princely Empire. Largely, the demand would be same. And when these people protested against the princes will react, right? Now you have people fighting princes. How will princes react? They will do violence. Yes, that is how it will be done. They will do the violence. So that's how the things went on, right? And like now in this background, an obvious question that should come to your mind, that where is Congress? Why are not they being talked about here? The reason is very simple. I'll just quickly tell you that reason. The reason is that that the Congress at this time, it officially had policy of non-interference. Congress officially had policy of non-interference in the affairs of the states, right? And why? What was their pretext for doing so? Their pretext for doing so was that they respect the traditional sovereignty rights of the princes. So that's like one. Actually, the hidden reasons are many. If you read many different books, so many of them quote so many things. So whatever you can think, just put it down. You will not go wrong. For example, Congress wanted to focus at this moment in the British India than the princely India. They did not want to create more war fronts. It is not that Congress was absolutely doing nothing, right? This is what we are doing here is a role of Congress over here. And it's not that Congress was absolutely not doing anything. It was the major thing that it did was in 1928 when it passed a resolution which urged the princes to introduce, I'll just quote unquote it, to introduce responsible government. So that's what the Congress was seeking from the princes, and it was based on the representations and sympathy and support for the legitimate and peaceful struggle, legitimate struggle. That is why Congress was interfering in this, but this was to a very limited extent. But the major blow to princes from Congress came when in 1937 it won the elections. Now this is something very deep. I mean, like, in elections chapter also, I did not discuss this part because there is no need of mentioning it there as such. But over here, you need to understand, even when the Congress won the elections in 1937, even the princely states got impacted. They were worried. They were now aware or about that Congress is getting stronger. They were panicky about it. And on the other hand, the 1935, the provision for a federation. The princes thought that we will actually, I'll give you the background of this federation thing. The princes thought that now we really need to give something, otherwise people will turn against us. So they agreed to the idea of federation. But the British idea of federation of the 1935 Act and the Congress idea of federation of the as they were demanding, and the princely idea of federation, these three ideas, princely idea of federation, these three ideas over here, they were quite different from what you would normally each one thought it to be for others to have. For example, like what princes thought, it wasn't the Congress idea. So this is the reason the princes would find them now in problem at this time. And I'll tell you one more thing about the this Congress these elections over here of 1937, which did play a role. Now Congress actually showed its true color in 1938 itself, when it abandoned its old policy of non-interference, and it actually started interfering. In 1938, Congress started interfering in the affairs of the states, and this was decided at the Haripura session of the Congress. And in this Haripura session, and in all the time to come, the movement was done under the leadership of All India State People Conference. I'll just give you the detail of this. Please understand the whole story first. So I have told you that what had happened, that the princes were earlier not ready, right? And then there was this carrot of federation for them by the Britishers, but the 1935 Act could not help them. Initially, the Congress was not in full support of it, but then eventually it did get in support of the people of the princely states, and initially did not support because of its own reasons. For example, it did not want to open more than one war front. Okay, so what it will do, it will, after winning the election, it knew it had the power. So at the Haripura session, under the leadership of All India State People Conference, it was decided to protest against the princes. So in other words, now here we have Congress. Congress on one side is fighting Britishers, and on one side is fighting the princely states. And enemy and enemy, okay, and enemy's enemy is a friend. So these two people will turn to be friends. And what colors would this friendship show? I will just talk to you about that in the coming lectures, and little bit in this lecture also. For this lecture, I can just tell you this much, that the smaller states though buckled under pressure. Smaller states, they said no, okay, fine, we'll join you, we are this, that. But the larger state, they struggled, and we'll be covering the story of this fight against these larger states and all those stories in the coming lectures. Okay. Now, finally, even the Britishers took away the offer of federation, right? You all know this probably already. When the Secretary of the State was there, his name was Jetland. So this guy Jetland comes and he just takes away. He doesn't take away exactly, he just puts it in the cold storage. The offer is not rescinded, it is just nobody no longer talks about it. So that is the basic story, overall story. To sum up the whole story for you, that initially it all started from 1900s, the lot of violence, and then after that the 1919 Act gave some privileges, and then 1928 Congress said, okay, you don't do much, but just do this much, give people some kind of more democracy. And then through the 1938 elections, when 1937 elections, when Congress won, and then in 1938 it came all out against the princely state through the leadership of All India State People Conference. That is how the whole story went. Now, before we end this lecture, I would like to talk to you about a little bit detail about All India State People Conference. Okay, now this AISPC, it was formed in December 1927, and this was formed under it was actually convened, not formed, it was convened at that time by three main people. Okay, who were they? They were Balwantri Mehta. Okay, let me just write this name because some people, non-Hindi people, might not be able to understand the name. So Balwantri Mehta, that's one. Number two was Manilal Kothari. Please do remember these names because they are important for your prelim exams specifically. And third was R Abhyankar. Now these three names are important, try to remember them. Okay, it's quite easy to remember them. I'll tell you, one is this Mehta, one is Abhyankar, and one is Kothari, right? M-A-K. So these three people, like you please pay special attention to these three. And then as I told you, right, the important thing is that people could not join Congress. Even the Congress people in these princely states, they were working outside the Congress. But please remember that the link between All India State People Conference and the Congress was strong. It unofficial or officially, the link was there. Congress was helping indirectly if it was not able to come open directly. Right now, in overall thing, there were two main developments which changed the whole situation regarding the princely states. Number one was, as I said, that the 1935 Act. As I talked about 1935 Act, actually the problem with this is it did introduce federation, but in this the representation was to be nominated members. The members will be nominated by the princes, but the Congress said these members should be elected directly and not nominated. So this was the first thing because of which Congress interfered in 1938 openly. Okay, and number two is that their total number would be 1/3 of the federal legislature. Okay, now British, because their number is so huge, and British would use these people against the Congress and the Indian national movement. So that is why Congress objected to this also, right? So that is why in this all this movement, Congress and these two people over here, Congress and All India State People Conference, these two people said that we will interfere, that we want you to have direct representation, not nomination by the princes. And because of this, and when these two demands were raised by All India State People Conference and Congress, like, you know, these two things, now all this led to greater struggle. This fueled the struggle against the princes also in the states. People got awakened, and that's how there were movement against the princely states for joining in India and not being under the princes. That is what people demanded. So that's how things were going on. And in this background, like you are understanding this, even the Congress understood this. And in the 1939 Tripuri session, Tripuri, as some people call it, session, Congress agreed full-fledged intervention in the name of Congress. Please remember, in 1938, under the leadership of, that is important, under the leadership of what do you call this, AISPC, under them that was going on. 1939 Tripuri session, it was full-fledged attack on these princes. In fact, there was something important called Ludhiana, Ludhiana, it's a city in Punjab. In the Ludhiana session of AISPC, when Jawahar Lal Nehru was elected its president, this set the seal of fusion between princely India and the British India. Now you can ask this question, that what was that moment when the princely India and British India got together against the British Empire? It was the fusion of course, or not of the princes, of the people in these places. Okay, it's the fusion of people, P-E-O-P-L-E, people. It was at the Ludhiana All India State People Conference where Nehru was the president. And then after this, what happened? We all know that World War II broke out, and the moment it happened, Congress resigned. You guys already know this, and government had lesser tolerance toward political activity anywhere, and government got very strict. There were a lot of violence by the Britishers. When I say government, I meant the Britishers here. And government was and moreover, government had this act of emergency of defense of India. It could arrest people and so on. So this way, movement fizzled out partially. Now this is not the end of the whole thing. This is just the introduction to the whole of the issue of princely states in India. In the upcoming lectures, I will be discussing with you few states in detail. For example, lecture wise we'll move on and we'll cover Rajkot properly, we'll cover Hyderabad in quite a detail, and you know, and such few states we'll be covering, and then finally we will conclude the whole this issue of princely states in India. I cannot go into much larger detail because most of these issues spread across 1947, and that would be beyond modern history. That will be part of post-independence history, and we'll cover that once we record those lectures sometime. But then I'll try to cover as much as possible before independence part. Okay, so that will finish this, and then we will move to the involvement of capitalists in the nationalist freedom struggle. That will come after, like once we are done with this. One will be the capitalist, and second will foreign policy, and then we'll cover the topic of communalism. And once we are done with the topic of communalism, in let's say next 4 to 5 lectures it will be done. Then we will join back where we had left few lectures back to cover that topic of, like, you know, all those topics like Krebs and August and all those, like all the familiar topics, right? But this part what I have discussed today, this is one of the most important lectures for you. I can assure you that this is one of the most important lectures. Why? Because this forms a linkage. Like normally you will not find this thing clubbed together. We started from 1900 almost will be covering up to 1947 about the princely India. Okay, so that's all about this lecture for today. But before you go, I'll just request you two things. That number one is, if you share this lecture, that will really support me to make more videos and better videos and all the videos much faster. Number one is sharing. Please do share. At least you are not paying any fees for it. You can do pay me by sharing it at least. Number two is, if you like this lecture, then you can always click on the like button, and if you want all these videos in your email box, then you will need to subscribe to us, and that you can do by clicking on this button over here, right? So that is all, and thank you so much for watching this.